Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. We're back for part 2 of creating a big, lonely Doug bonsai tree. In part 1 of this series, Leszek brought these Douglas fir trees all the way from out west to here in Ontario. Today is a wet, rainy day, perfect for planting trees here in the bonsai zone. The Douglas firs that Leszek collected all seem to have a shallow root system, so I'm trying to decide what kind of pot to put the trees in. In the springtime, I bought this mica pot and it was full of dead larch trees. So I was thinking that this might be a suitable pot to plant my Douglas firs in. I think this large, shallow mica pot will hold the root system of the Douglas firs nicely. I can mound the soil up in the middle if I have to, and I think it'll help generate a nice flat radial root system because the pot is so shallow. I think I will try planting them all in the large oval mica pot. If it doesn't work out, if the root system's too tall or they're too crowded, I can always plant some of them in separate pots. The first step will be to remove the trees and soil from this pot. I will keep the dead larch trees. They're useful for making forest plantings. So you can have some dead trees. You can have some trees fallen over in the forest. It gives it a naturalistic appearance. The first thing I'll check is to see if the trees are wired into the pot. So if there is wires underneath here, I'll have to remove them. There's some roots growing out the bottom. A big one that was cut off. It must have been going into the ground. But no wires, so that's good. I'll remove the rocks from the planting. They look like they've been cut with a saw or a grinder or something. They're flat on the bottom, so they'll be useful for future landscapes. There's another one back here. There's the saw cut on the bottom. Nice. Another one here. That one's just naturally flat. I'll see if I can get the trees out now. So here I go. Whoa. Oh yeah, they're coming out. In one nice big piece. Okay. I'll give the pot a good clean and get some drainage screens in the bottom. I've got the pot all cleaned up, and suddenly beside these trees it's starting to look quite small. I'll get the pot ready and start planting the trees and see how it goes for space. I do want to show you one thing before I forget. I've been working on a yew tree in the backyard. It's been growing in the ground and I just pruned it up, and someday I'll collect it as a bonsai tree. Way back in here, I planted a yew tree years ago. I'm thinking 15 years ago. It was just a small one from a garden center. So here it is. I've done a lot of big chops on it over the years. You can see one right here. And there's a dead section here that could be carved out. But the tree's healing quite nicely. There's some dead branches on the bottom. I've kind of, tried to keep a rough shape to the tree, but yeah, it's been kind of roughly pruned over the years. Just there's another trunk on the other side here. Let me show you that. I'll come way over here. So there's two trees. They may be connected at the base, I don't know. You can see the cuts from the deadwood here. How you cut it, it dies back, and then it starts healing over. So that can be carved out to look natural. There's a dead stump on the inside here. But the overall structure of the tree is looking pretty good. It'll definitely be a large bonsai. But yeah, so you can grow your own tree stock or your own Yamadori stock in your own backyard and get something that looks pretty good. Hopefully, anyway. So I'll be doing a video on yews coming up. So look for that in the future. I use regular window screening as drainage screens in the bottom of my pots. It's just a, what is it made of? Probably nylon, is it? This is the charcoal colored. You can buy this as a window screening kit. So it's just a fine screening like that. I'll get the screens cut up and fitted to the bottom of the pot, and I'll mix up some new soil. I will be using my new pumice instead of perlite in this mix. Pumice is better, but it's way more expensive. Probably 4 times as expensive. So I'm going to try it out with the Douglas Firs. I want them to live, so I'm going to give them the best soil possible. There's 9 holes in the bottom of the pot, so I'll cut some drainage screens. 7, 8, and 9. The pumice I'm using is Mother Earth expertly crafted medias and amendments premium pumice. Should be pretty good. I'm not getting a lot of fine particles out of the pumice. I could probably use it straight from the bag, but I better screen it anyway. It's time to add the turfus now. I'll mix it 50-50, so 50% turfus and 50% pumice. I'll give the soil a mix. I'll put a shallow layer of soil in the bottom of the pot, and then we'll position the trees. We'll also find out if I mixed up enough soil. I think I did, but who knows? These pots hold a lot of soil. They're deceiving shallow pots. I'll plant the tallest tree here, so the profile will be a asymmetrical triangle. I'll get the first tree out of its bag. There's the root system on it. A lot of the native soil here. I'm trying to think how to plant it, maybe just sideways like that. There is a large root that was cut off on the bottom here. If I trim that back further, I could get it a little shallower. I could plant it a little shallower so that knob isn't sticking there. So I think I'll reduce that down a bit. I'll use the saw to reduce this down. I want to cut as little root off these trees as possible. And this one was already cut, so I'm keeping all my fine feeder roots. This is very tough. Tougher than a spruce tree, I would say. Okay, that's a nice flush cut. I think the tree will sit a lot better in the pot now. It almost stands by itself. It's got quite a nice radial root system. Just had that one bump on the bottom that I had to remove. Okay, so I think I'm going to get some bricks and pile them around here to hold the trees in place until I get them all positioned. Okay, let's see if these bricks work. Put this one a little forward like that. Sorry. I'll get the next tallest tree unwrapped now. And out it comes. And it has a fairly shallow root base also. That's good. So I think this will go on the far side of the tallest tree. This tree also has the remains of one root sticking down here, so I'm going to prune that off so it sits a little better in the pot. There we go. So there's only a little tiny feeder root off of it, but I think it should be fine. There's lots of other roots all the way around. So my big tree kind of tipped over when I was getting this little tree here in position, so I'll try and place the two of them together. I'll get my bricks out of there, the two trees in. I'll put them on the same curve. What is holding that up? Oh, okay. Maybe like that. That kind of looks good together. Well, let's see if I can hold them in place with these bricks now. And one more here. Stay. They're holding. Yay! Here's a shot just to let you know how tall these trees really are. Massive. The next tallest tree is the one that is probably the oldest tree. It has all that character on the trunk and branches. So there it is. Quite a specimen. Very flat on the bottom. No roots I need to cut off there. I think that was the one that was probably growing on a rock or something. I need 3 hands here. That's what I need. I'm looking at the composition. This tree has the thickest trunk, so I think I like the arrangement of the 3 trees, but they all have to be moved over. This tree's got to be brought forward, and these ones more in the background. I've moved everything over, but it's still not right. I have to fit in this little tree over here, which looks good beside the other fir. Let me get it out of the package. Might fit in nicely like that. I think this is a fairly good arrangement. I've got depth in the planting. I've got the biggest trees kind of highlighted in the front. These would get pruned down in height if I kept it as a forest eventually, but for now I just want everything to grow nice and healthy. I'm going to add a lot of the soil that Leszek put the trees in around here. It's mostly perlite. It has some of the natural soils in here, so it should be good for the trees. Help them have a speedy recovery. I'll use some of these rocks to hold the roots down into the soil. They kind of spring up. Like that. And I'll put some soil around them. Keep them moist down there. I have some large rocks that I'll try and replace the bricks with. It's hard to believe that these trees were on a plane just 2 days ago. Probably flying at 20,000 feet. Traveling halfway across the country. Okay, I'm going to replace these bricks with this large limestone rock. Hopefully nothing will tip over on me here. Seem to be staying in place for the moment. As long as the wind doesn't come up. I want to get some soil in around these roots. I didn't realize Leszek had mixed up so much soil. He must have used a lot of soil for these. So thank you, Leszek. I don't know how much of the soil I mixed up I'll need. This stuff will be quite good. I'll start working the soil in as I build it up in layers and get it all worked into the root system. Okay, that's a lot better. This tree is getting more stable in the pot. It's not too bad. I'm just using the last bits of the soil that Leszek had them in, which has a lot of native soil with it. And as we said, they'll have a lot of beneficial fungus and bacteria in it that'll help the trees recover, hopefully, and thrive. So I'm just putting it on in layers and working it into the roots as I go. If you dump it all on at once, it's harder to work in and harder to see what you're doing. This big rock will eventually get positioned here to hold the trees in place. I've been thinking a lot about this big lonely Doug planting. I'm thinking bonsai kind of takes you to another place and sometimes another time. And it might be nice to show big lonely Doug before all the trees around it were clear cut. So I'm toying with that idea. It might be quite nice to show big lonely Doug maybe, 100 years ago. And so you can see what the old growth forest used to look like. I'm starting to add some of the soil that I mixed up now. I'll be piling the soil up fairly high on the roots, so it won't look very good at first. But over time, I can slowly reveal the root base. You want to keep all these roots in the ground so they don't dry out. It's more important to keep the trees alive than to show the surface roots at this stage in time. Every now and then I brush against the trees and you get this great aroma off them, this beautiful fir aroma. It just takes me to Western Canada. And when you think about it, I am actually in part of Western Canada. I've got the soil, the trees. It's like part of Western Canada has come to Ontario. This brick is sort of... it's not really holding anything up. This tree's quite firm in the soil now. I'll slide the brick out. There were a lot of roots underneath the brick. So I'll definitely get some soil in there. In this hole here. Luckily there's no wind right now, so it's not blowing these trees around. And they are feeling quite stable in here. Quite possibly these smaller rocks will hold them in place. I'm going to work the soil into the roots. Try and straighten this tree up a bit. Yeah, I can feel a lot of air pockets underneath this tree. So once I get this soil worked in, it'll form up nicely in the pot. I think by the amount of roots in these trees that survival is not going to be an issue if I keep them under good conditions. I think there's plenty of root there. They were collected at a good time of the year in fall. Leszek's taken really good care of them in the transport and, keeping them in good shape until he came down here. So I think the chances of survival for these trees is really high. Okay, I'll place a rock back here to hold this tree in place so it can't really go anywhere. And then I'll also place one back in here just to weigh the roots down on this tree also. And that holds that in place really nicely too. In fact, all the trees are nice and firm in the pot. I'm working away at the back now, just making sure the soil's all worked in the best I can. I'm starting to feel like I'm working in a forest now. It's yeah, the trees, they're starting to look giant to me. It's amazing. Now these trees, right now they're kind of curved, but I think they'll straighten up by themselves once they start growing next year. They'll always have this curve at the trunk, which is all right. That's, as Leszek said, that's very common for a mountain-grown tree. They come out the side of the mountain and grow straight up. So nothing wrong with that. It gives it a real mountain feel to it. So the soil's feeling pretty good back here. It's I've got it worked into the roots really nicely. I think we're getting close to watering the planting. The planting is all finished. Leszek did the best job he could collecting the trees. I did the best job I could planting them. So we'll just have to see how they grow in the future. It's time now to give the trees a watering. Their first watering of many to come. I'll be leaving this planting out here on the bench, which is, you know, fairly shaded, until it starts getting colder out, and then I might put it on the floor of the greenhouse for a while, and then eventually down into the cold basement underneath the plant room for the winter. So I'll be, you know, really protecting this planting, keeping it out of the wind, out of the intense sun, and out of the extreme temperatures. So I won't get a second chance at planting a Douglas Fir grove. I won't get a second chance at a big lonely Doug. I may add the seedlings to this forest someday also. I'll also miss the trees a lot on hot days, if we get any more hot days. Like it's warm now, t-shirt weather, but it could cool off any time. It is the middle of October almost. That's the time we usually start getting frost. Okay, I think that will do it. We'll go and have a look at the trees now. So you can see these two are very, very tall. And they're still bent over from being folded up in a suitcase. But I think they'll straighten out. Yeah, most of these coniferous trees, they want to grow straight, the trunks especially. Yeah, so it's looking good. I'm really happy with the planting. I don't know which tree will become big lonely Doug by himself, or if, as I said, I may keep it as a group planting and it'll be the before logging picture of big lonely Doug. Yeah, so really nice trees. I really have to thank Leszek again. He came through with some beautiful trees for me. So that's it. I really, really enjoyed planting these. And this is just the start of it. I think, well, years from now, who knows what this will all look like. Yeah, a new beginning to a forest. That's all the work I'll be doing to the Douglas Firs today. They've gone from a suitcase to a forest. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for watching today in the Bonsai Zone.